So anything short of a servant caught within this noble phantasm's area of attack likely gets turned into a puddle of blood and bones, or becomes a statue for the rest of eternity. Shortly after this, Gilgamesh uses
She's OP! What the fuck?
that's unique to his character.
What's up, Demi? Today, we finna be reacting to every noble phantasm from Fate Grand Order. Babylonia explained. Any news suggested this to me. He said react to it, and I said, nigga, I got you. Hopefully I don't get copyrighted, which I feel like I am. If I do get copyrighted, then I just fucking edit it so I don't get copyrighted. But if I do get copyrighted, I'm gonna see first if I get copyrighted. I'm probably gonna get copyrighted. I'm probably gonna get taken down. But let's see and find out and try. Anyway, yeah, he told me react to it, and I said cool. It says something to do with Fate, which, well, you know, I fuck with Fate. You know what I mean? I seen the Fate fights the other day, and the Fate fights were pretty amazing. So I guess we're gonna be explaining some things about Fate Noble Phantasm, which I don't know what it is, but hey, let's motherfucking see.
I'm gonna be honest.
Be honest
Even
with
though
me,
Fate Grand Order Babylonia wasn't done by Ufotable, the animation definitely went above and beyond. But
Yeah,
where they
what I seen it
completely
was.
captivated my full attention was when any servant, goddess, grand assassin, or dick wizard was using their noble phantasms. These were such momentous feats that I couldn't help but be in awe at what I was watching every single time.
The shit I seen in the top 10
They
fights,
truly
the shit was
captured
amazing.
the essence of how impactful a noble phantasm should be. However, I think a greater level of appreciation for these noble phantasms could be had, especially when you take into account how these ultimate abilities tie into their characters' deeper lore. So let's go through each noble phantasm in the order they appeared in the anime and talk a little bit about what exactly that power was.
Okay.
And if you want to know the full extent of each servant's origins and powers, then feel free to check out my other
Video.
servant profile videos as well. But now, let's begin.
Let's go, Nick. Hey! 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 I see it.
Right from episode 0 and episode 1, we get to see Mashu's Lord Camelot, Castle of the Distant Utopia. It's a noble phantasm that's originally possessed by the Knight of the Round Table, Galahad, the son of Lancelot. He wasn't the greatest fighter, but his defensive nature and tactician mentality were unrivaled.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's his
yeah.
heroic spirit that's infused into Mash's body to make this shielder demi-servant. Lord Camelot is a noble phantasm that represents the very castle the Knights of the Round Table resided in.
This
The
is like a
shield
video
itself
game.
is said to be made from the Round Table, and it's meant to provide the same form of protection that the Tower of Camelot once did. What it does is generate a conceptual defensive barrier that scales in strength with proportion to the willpower of its user.
Willpower!
This means that it's not a physical barrier with a fixed ceiling for how much damage it can take. It's a protection of the soul that doesn't register in the laws of physics. So long as Mash doesn't lose hope, Lord
Invoke the
Camelot
soul,
will
huh?
not falter. So, given that there's no limit to the amount of defense it can produce, it's definitely one of the most powerful defensive noble phantasms.
So it
Second,
just
probably only to
requires only your willpower and your soul,
in
huh?
episode
Is
2,
that it?
we see Enkidu use Age of Babylon,
Tough.
the wisdom of the people. It's interesting to note that without this noble phantasm, Gilgamesh's Gatling gun variant to his Gate of Babylon wouldn't even exist. You see, Age of Babylon
I didn't
allows
know what he
Enkidu to
did.
create any type of weapon he wants from the earth. As a living weapon himself, one that was created by the gods, he has the ability to generate
different.
any tool or weapon he needs from the ground, each being a brand new original creation.
Oh, he's
of
gone!
his
Ooh,
brain.
this is...
So,
Ooh!
when Gilgamesh first encountered this never-ending onslaught of weapons being projected at him, his only way to keep up was to do the same. He matched Enkidu's output of weapons by launching his own directly from the Gate of Babylon. At the time, the two were evenly matched, as Enkidu's Age of Babylon was perfectly equal to
Damn, that shit nice with it.
It was a power strong enough to keep Gilgamesh occupied in battle for days, and no less against a
It was like
Gilgamesh
for
that was in
days?
his prime. If you want to know which
Definitely.
one's stronger, then perhaps take a look towards Fate's Strange Fake. But while we're on the topic of Gilgamesh, the caster version we see
Yeah,
in
that
Fate
nigga looks-
Grand Order
he look
uses
cold
a
as shit.
significantly weaker version of Gate of Babylon. Remember, since Gilgamesh distributed all his weapons except for magical staves to the people
Bah!
of Uruk, his Gate of Babylon has lost a lot of offensive power. Now, rather than bombarding his opponents with swords and spears, he instead opens the gate to cast a barrage of long-ranged spells. It's definitely not as strong as his archer version, But luckily, he has another noble phantasm that we'll talk
You
about
got a
later.
hard version?
Next up,
Nigga got
from
different
episode
versions?
8 is Ushiwakamaru's Shana.
Yeah, she was fucking cold, bro. She had them. That's the bit that had them yawning sleeps.
That
She was going
consists of
crazy.
5 different secret techniques depicted from her numerous legends.
Okay.
These legends all stem from defining moments in Ushiwakamaru's life as the renowned and fearsome military commander of the Genji clan. Unfortunately, we only got to see 2 of these
Am I
techniques
seeing
in
some
action. The first was Usumidori, short steps with the heavenly blade.
Okay.
A single powerful slash with her Usumidori
Yeah.
blade that is very difficult
I
to
remember
dodge.
that fight. Well, I didn't see the
Meaning
fight,
that
but I
the
just
strike is
seen
preceded
the
by
way
an
she was
advanced
moving. The way
martial
she was
arts
moving in that bitch
technique,
was
a
amazing.
technique that allows Ushiwakamaru
Magnificently.
to almost instantly close the distance between herself and her opponent. Her second feat was the jumping of the 8 ships at Danno Uda.
Ooh.
This refers back to the legendary sea battle of Danno Uda in the year 1185.
Oh shit.
Ushiwakamaru was leading the entire Genji naval fleet
Oh
against the
fuck.
rival.
Yo, this bitch is crazy.
So, what this noble phantasm
Wait, that's what she had to
embodies
be
was
honest
the
with. I remember this.
Ushiwakamaru
Yo.
leaping between ships during
Yo.
raging tides to
Yo.
blast the
Fuck
enemy
some more.
when
Yo.
hand-to-hand combat.
She's nasty.
It's this feat
Look at
that
the way she's
enables her to not
moving,
only
buddy.
jump higher, but also traverse any sort of terrain so long as there is a minimal foothold, making it look as if jumping
Oh,
between
but you
buildings
guys
would
get
be
what?
transport.
Oh,
Now, those were only Act 2 and Act 4 of her Wandering Tales. There's still 3 other techniques that provide more to Ushiwakamaru's
Okay.
kit. Act 1 is called Eye of Shiva, detecting the 6
Damn.
secret teachings. An ability that instantly relocates every person within a
Yo,
specified
she really got to be honest
It's
sleep.
highly useful for breaking enemy ranks and causing
Yo,
mass confusion.
she got on some very short
Act
clothing, and
3
I'm
is
loving it.
Benkei, steadfast position. A more
Damn.
offensive technique that creates an imitation of Benkei's body to block an incoming attack. The more faith Ushiwakamaru has in Benkei, the stronger this Benkei shield will be.
Okay.
And finally, Act 5 is Hoemaru, Spider Slayer.
Hoemaru.
Imagine if Ushiwakamaru was part of the Hashira and she could use breathing techniques to make her blade super effective against
Oh.
demons. That's pretty much what this is.
Oh, wow.
Bringing us to the last technique of
That's
her
nice.
Wandering Tales. Now, in that same fight with Gorgon,
She's
we're
like
not
that,
going
huh?
to see Leonidas use Thermopylae
Excuse me?
Enmoti,
Who is this nigga?
Guardian of the Hot Gates.
Where's his clothes?
If you've ever seen the movie 300, then this
Heard
noble
of it.
phantasm is pretty much an embodiment of that event. It's a reenactment of the 300 Spartans led by Leonidas who defended against a Persian invasion force.
Sparta!
Just as it was in history, this noble phantasm is typically used as a counterattack. It initiates with the summoning of 300 Spartans, each
Oh,
possessing
shit.
a mid-range endurance rank that's
Oh.
pretty decent for
Whoa,
any sort of
damn, there's some big ass
purpose
niggas.
is to
Oh
prevent
shit!
Leonidas
He
entering
got
massive
tight
damage with
niggas.
this attack. After holding
He really
the
got
defense,
titans, like, no,
Leonidas then
seriously.
launches a counterattack that scales in power with the number of Spartans left over. If you take into account what we saw in Babylonia, it's almost as if the counterattack looked as powerful as the defense itself. But at its core, this is
Oh,
a
this
more
shit
defensive
breaking.
noble phantasm than anything else. The counterattack is just a nice little bit of damage on top. After all, we remember the Battle of Thermopylae not for his offensive turns on the Persian army, but rather his outstanding defense that resisted their consistent advances for 3 days straight.
Oh shit.
Next we have Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent, a
Quetzalcoatl.
pterosaur from the Jurassic Age whose name derives from this Mesoamerican goddess. The pterosaur itself is the noble phantasm. Except the ones that she summons aren't your
It's a
everyday
big-ass
Quetzalcoatl's from
bird.
the Cretaceous period.
The fuck?
No,
Oh,
for someone
what's
as
that?
tall as
A
Quetzalcoatl,
special rank?
she rides a
Oh,
significantly
fuck!
more
Oh, this is a
phantasmal
demon.
version of them. Divine beasts that have authority over lightning, winds, and rain, giving them the
Authority
ability
over
to
lightning,
manipulate these
nigga,
aspects
what?
of the world. In episode 13, we get to see Ereshkigal use a brand new noble phantasm, one that was unique to the anime, Namu, Abzu, and Gugulana.
Okay.
Other than the context we were
Is that a
given in the anime,
skeleton, nigga?
it's hard to interpret how this attack
With
relates
titties
to
as
Ereshkigal's
skulls?
actual myth. I mean, Gugulana was her husband once upon a time, but how that affects the impact of this powerful spear strike is yet to be revealed.
Oh, that's that nigga.
Immediately after this fight, the Old Man of the Mountain appears and uses
Why did I
Azrael,
say that shit?
the angel that announces death. Although
Oh,
it
damn.
appears that the noble phantasm's effect is caused by the sword, that's actually not the case at all. The sword he wields has no name. It's nothing more than a common weapon that anyone
Damn.
could use. No, Azrael is the essence of the noble phantasm
What the
itself.
fuck? Is this a
It's the
video game,
ability or
man?
technique to impose the concept of death onto literally anything by applying Azrael to
Yaga.
the sword. Be it a person, primordial god, or even abstract concept like Ereshkigal's connection to the Three Goddess Alliance, he can impose death onto each of these things with a single cut. So basically he can kill literally anything. Not to mention that as someone who is quite literally the physical embodiment of death, anything he imposes death upon then has a low chance of instantly dying. That's pretty crazy, especially when you consider that Tiamat could have been one-shot when she gained the concept of death.
Damn, she got some
The name
big
of
ass
Snowman
yonkers,
is
nigga. What
is
the
the ancient
fuck?
of death. Supposedly when God
Oh
created
shit, you
death,
going dummy.
Death looked at Azrael and
beep.
proceeded to submit to him. Because of this, Azrael gained the authority to determine what shall live and what shall
doing on
die.
the ground?
So it's a very fitting name for an ability possessed by someone who pretty much has that same responsibility. In episode 14 and 15, Anna reveals her possession of the mystic eyes Sibylle, the same eyes possessed by her
nice
future
ass
self
eyes.
Medusa. The thing is, Medusa possesses these eyes
Oh, she's
to escape,
Medusa.
allowing her to use the petrification ability whenever she wants. However, due to being a younger version of Medusa, Anna hasn't gained these mystic eyes yet. She can only use them while calling her noble phantasm, Caress of the Medusa, Embrace of the Goddess.
She ain't evolved
It's
yet,
pretty
yeah.
straightforward. Just a single target attack that turns the opponent to stone,
Yeah.
typically opening up a
Medusa
window
shit.
to strike that the opponent would not be able to defend.
Bam!
Skipping to episode 17, now that Tiamat has entered the stage, it's time for the goddesses to show their true power.
Oh, fuck.
First, we saw
What
Ishtar
the?
use
Is that the
Argyle
sun,
Gush,
nigga?
mountain range shaking firewood of Venus. It's a representation of the myth where Ishtar comes across a mountain whose natural beauty far surpasses her own. Being a goddess of beauty meant that this mountain's very existence was an affront on her own authority. Therefore, she thought that it shouldn't be allowed to exist. So she trampled over the entire mountain with an increasing amount of divine force at every step.
See that you hop
Then,
on some
with a
shit.
single
I don't
test of
know.
her
I don't
spear
watch
to
you
the
hop
mountain's
so, but
core,
that's how
she
shit
caused
was, right?
the entire range to collapse. It's this act of annihilating an entire mountain that's replicated by this noble phantasm. First, Ishtar activates Mana's warp function to open up a portal to Venus as it was during the Age of the Gods. Then, using her authority as a goddess of Venus, she creates a copy of the entire planet, projects it into a form that's shootable from her bow, then fires it like an arrow towards her,
What the fuck?
dealing an
What?
impact strong enough to
Made a
shatter
copy
entire
of the
mountains.
planet, did some shit with it, and
Shortly
used the
after this,
power of the shit.
Quetzalcoatl used
Nigga,
both
what?
her noble
That
phantasm
bitch is
and
a
was
god.
probably
What?
best
She's
seen
fucking
in the
with
entire
planets?
First,
That
she
shit is
used
crazy.
Piedra del Sol, the Sunstone, the monolith we saw at the
Piedra
top of
del
the
Sol.
temple in episode 11. During the era of the Aztecs, it was a megalith that allowed them to observe the past and the future. Now it serves as Quetzalcoatl's primary symbol of worship. Because of this, it's what provides her with a significant portion of her divinity and subsequent
That
power.
bitch is grabbing
So,
fire
what
and
this
shit.
noble phantasm does
Nigga's
is
crazy.
open up a gate that releases a portion of Quetzalcoatl's authority over the sun, allowing her to unleash these solar winds that scorch everything in their path, almost as if she was using the sun itself to burn the entire landscape. It's an ability so strong that not only did it burn away a majority of Tiamat's money, but it also turned the ground into molten lava. It's even been said to have enough literal firepower to vaporize Uruk in its entirety. But it's Piedra del Sol that
Is
sets
it
the
some
stage
hell?
for the variant of her much stronger
I
second
think must be in a
noble
volcano
phantasm,
or some shit.
the one that imitates the impact of the meteorite that wiped out the dinosaurs.
A meteor?
Solid water, flame, burn even gods to ashes.
What the
In
fuck?
mythology, it's meant to symbolize her own temple in flames, the one that she willingly burned to the ground in order to prevent a rival god from gaining the treasures inside. Normally, this is translated into an ability that envelops the opponent with fire and prevents them
Fuck,
from
she's
using their noble
nasty.
phantasm. However, due to her passion for
If you turn this up to
meteorite,
meteor.
she modified it to tie more into her origins as a goddess on Earth. When not fighting Tiamat, the regular Ushiwakamaru would be a devastating piledriver or dropkick from thousands of meters in the air. A dropkick that we now know
Damn.
as.
Oh, shit! That noise fucked me up.
But when that's combined with the power output from Piedra del Sol, the dropkick becomes enhanced to the point where
That
it would
bitch
have
got a
effect
fucking
similar to a
godly
massive
drop
station
kick.
level
Fuck.
meteorite.
She got a
leaps into
fucking
space,
nuke
then
drop
falls into
kick.
a
A nuke
dropkick
that can
that
screw the
replicates
word
the power
drop
of
kick.
the meteorite that wiped out the dinosaurs. The same meteorite that brought this goddess to our planet millions of years ago.
Damn,
In
so
the next
she did that
episode,
shit? She fucked
Gorgon
with the
used
dinosaurs?
Pandemonium Cetus,
Fuck, man, why'd
forced
you
seal
do that?
Pandemonic Temple.
I'm glad you did it,
This is
bitch.
a rather terrifying
Around?
noble phantasm,
You double
because by
ass bitch.
calling its true name, Medusa gives up the part of her that's a goddess. She essentially accepts the fact that she's the monster that everyone in Greek mythology made her out to be.
Oh.
And by doing so, she truly becomes the Gorgon, the fully
Damn.
metamorphosized version of Medusa that devoured her own sisters. Medusa typically tries to deny this fact with all her heart.
Yeah.
She tries her best to cling to the only part of her
God
that wasn't
damn!
hers.
That's not that far! God.
That's why
That's
she
almost
would
that
be so
stomach.
enraged whenever Anna or Leonidas would call her Gorgon. It's also why she hates to use this noble phantasm.
You
So
know.
it would be the same thing as accepting her true form.
Yeah.
And that was something she wanted to avoid at all costs.
But she couldn't.
But when she does finally come to terms with what she really is, well, that's when we can see Medusa at her strongest. By turning into the true Gorgon with Pandemonium Cetus, everything around her becomes petrified and all organic life becomes liquefied.
Sheesh! What? Everything becomes petrified, everything becomes
returning back to normal. So anything short of a servant caught within this noble phantasm's area of attack likely gets turned into a puddle of blood and bones, or becomes a statue for the rest of eternity. Shortly after this, Gilgamesh uses
OP!
the
What the
phantasm
fuck?
that's unique to his caster form. Malamudingir.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
Gil gave
I
this
said
collection of weapons to the
demon.
people of Uruk, each of which were intended to be launched from the dingirs mounted along the walls of the city. But when King's signal cannon is called, Gilgamesh gains control of all 360 dingirs, proceeding to fire them simultaneously to launch a concentrated barrage of what's essentially the collective power of mankind. Literally
Oh my
every
god!
weapon in Gilgamesh's
He like
treasury
not
is
shut the
launched
fuck
at the
up!
target. And given what we saw in the anime, that's pretty much
This
exactly
nigga's
what happened.
nasty!
So it's a very straightforward noble phantasm. What may have been a bit more confusing was when Enkidu turned his own body into the chains of heaven to fight
Oh,
Tiamat.
shit.
This was Enkidu's
Ooh, I
second
got
noble
Medusa get
phantasm.
straight like that!
Oh humans,
him is
let us restrain the
straight
gods. As an existence created for the sole purpose of keeping Gilgamesh bound to the heavens, Enuma Elish was the ultimate attack to do just that.
Oh my
But
god.
after becoming Gilgamesh's friend, he instead chose to use this power for the sake of humanity. So what happens is, Enkidu uses a significant amount of energy from the world to transform his own body into a divine construct that the world can recognize. In this case, it was the Chains of Heaven. Then, just like how he does with Age of Babylon, he launches himself at the target for a large-scale piercing attack.
Damn.
What's unique about this noble phantasm, though, is that the source of its power comes directly from the counterforce. What this means is that the more of a threat to humanity the opponent is, the stronger Enkidu's attack will be.
Wow.
It's
So
a noble phantasm
instead
that's
of just
meant to
OP
preserve the
shit,
integrity
as strong
of
as
the
you are,
world's
the
people.
stronger my shit finna be.
In
That's
episode
just crazy.
20,
I would love some shit like
Ereshkigal
that.
uses her noble phantasm to create an attack that
Woo!
replicates the same feat of Ishtar destroying the mountain. Kur-Kigal Rakala, the bellows of Kur that tramples upon Iker. It's
That shit
essentially the
seems-
same
it's
noble
just off that
phantasm as
fucking
Ishtar's,
name, that shit sounds
but
OP
rather
as
than the
fuck.
attack being shot from the heavens to the earth below, it's instead an attack from the underworld
There's a
to
lot of
the
heavy
realm above.
godly shit going on
Ereshkigal
in
is
this show.
able to materialize a shrine given to her by her husband, a god who was known to rule the
Nigga.
underworld at her side.
Nigga.
By summoning this
Nigga.
Ereshkigal pretty much brings the
Let
underworld
me
to her,
stop.
granting her all the authorities she would normally have while in the underworld, even when not being in the underworld. The attack itself certainly isn't as strong as Ishtar's, but it does open up the field for Ereshkigal to
What the
conquer.
fuck is that?
Now, I was hoping that Merlin using Garden of Avalon would have given
The
us more
furthest
context
to
on what this noble
utopia.
phantasm actually does. But unfortunately, we didn't get too much info. As I'm sure you know, Merlin is usually trapped within the eternal utopia of Avalon, a place within no person can die and no evil can exist. It's a perfectly pure land, free from the decay and destruction of the natural world. When Merlin calls this noble phantasm, the area around the tower called the Garden of Avalon is replicated. He pretty much summons portions of Avalon to the immediate area. Now, what I assume happens after is that because Merlin has materialized Avalon itself, the blessings that come from being within Avalon's domain are applied as well. Anyone within these summoned areas could very well be immune to curses or even death,
Oh,
making it a
shit.
very useful defensive ability.
Ass
Though the
nigga.
full extent of this noble phantasm remains a mystery, which honestly is something we've already come to expect from Merlin. Finally, we get to what could very well be the strongest noble phantasm in the entire Fate universe. Ea, which produces
Sword
the
of
devastating
Rush.
attack Enuma Elish. Now, Ea isn't something that can be so easily explained in a few lines. I can spend an entire video discussing its complex nature and origins. I suppose the important aspect to know is that Ea is this primordial sword that can create winds that tear the very fabric of space. They're described as
the
compressed
fuck?
and intertwined
What the
with
type
webs
shit
of
these
wind
niggas
that turn
on?
into gaps between space and time. These result in an undefendable attack that tends to destroy everything in its path. Anywhere the winds cut, a void of nothingness will open up and
Oh
begin to
my
swallow up the
god,
surrounding area.
that shit is
It's an
fucking
attack that attempts to replicate the very
OP,
instance of
nigga.
creation, Genesis. Of course, there's definitely more to it than just that. But as I said earlier, if you want to know more, I have all these full servant profile videos that go much more in depth with their lore and abilities. The most recent one was on Ishtar, so feel free to check that one out and any of the others through the links in the description. But yeah, that's every noble phantasm from Fate Grand Order Babylonia.
Wow.
This was a pretty fun video to make, so if you want to see another one just like it for any of the other Fate series, then go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao.
Hey man, shout out to Any News, man. Dope video. I know that shit probably took a fucking mad long time to make. Yeah, shout out to that nigga. Yeah. Dope. All them powers were low-key fucking OP as shit. Like, all them powers, like, they were O fucking P. Like, them bitches were fucking, they were a little different. That's what I was saying. They were a little fucking different. It was niggas, all these niggas were damn near gods, doing godly like shit. Just doing fucking crazy fucking shit. I mean, it's weird, and I mean, very weird shit going on. That's how I would describe it. Very weird. But yeah. I mean, yeah. Shout out to Any News. Shout out to the dude that requested me. Yeah. If y'all want me to react to some more fucking fake fights, fake whatever, I'll probably react to it. Yeah. Pretty dope to see. Pretty dope to watch, and I'll see y'all later.